Here at the Stanford Business School, we celebrate failure. We even go as far as to say it's necessary for growth and success. And to look at a leader such as yourself, it can be extremely tempting to view you as absent of failure. Given that entrepreneurship, one of the hardest parts is managing your own psychology, can you talk to us about how you've navigated failure and self-doubt?
Well, I wouldn't say I've ever celebrated failure. But I've run into it now and again. Let's say that. Okay. Probably the most spectacular was my entry into Nigeria. Now that was pretty spectacular. We went in just after the end of military rule in Nigeria. This would be, I guess, 99, 2000. And biggest 1 in 5 black people in the world is a Nigerian. And this is some market. And we were trying to get in. And we went in, and of course, we had to build a consortium. And Nigeria was particularly difficult. Today, you've got billions of dollars going into Nigeria. But if you look back in 2000, 2001, there was no mobile industry in Nigeria. And no one was putting money into Nigeria. I remember going around the banks in South Africa and investors, and they said, "Are you mad? You want to go to Nigeria?" I said, "We have to be in Nigeria. If you're going to be in business in Africa, you have to be in Nigeria, period." So we went in and we built a consortium of Nigerian high net worth businesses and business leaders and so forth to bid for a license, and the government had set up an auction system. And they became the most expensive, even to this day, licenses ever issued in sub-Sahara, south of the Sahara. I know in Tunisia something paid more for it. But we paid in 2001 $285 million for a license. And a year into the business, one of my partners walked in and put a bill on the table for one of the state governors and said, "You got to pay us each $4 million or we throw you out of the country." So I got thrown out of the country and lost, pretty much got kicked out of that investment. It took me 10 years of international arbitration to win back our investment that we had lost. And along the way, I had that governor jailed, spent 13 years in British prison after making the mistake of going to Dubai, got picked up by Interpol. I mean, it's no fact that I was a witness against him for corruption. So, that was bittersweet, very difficult time for us. But there were a lot of entrepreneurial lessons. And after 5 years, we went back into Nigeria, and the fastest growing parts of our businesses are in Nigeria today. So we learned a lot, but it was really, really difficult, and there were no celebrations. Except when I got the Arbitral Award, which is the biggest in African history. So there was a nice end to it.
You've been sought out by many leaders such as Barack Obama. But who do you look to for inspiration? Are there any up-and-coming young leaders on the continent that inspire you about the future of Africa?
Absolutely. When I started that Facebook page, my daughter, I didn't know that my daughter was at college in the US, was sharing things I was sending her with her friends. So she started saying to me, "But my friends think you should talk about this." I said, "What friends?" She said, "Well, we share everything." So we then got to start working on this Facebook page. And the most interesting part for me is reading the comments. I just get absolutely inspired by the comments of young Africans from virtually every corner of the continent who are running businesses in extraordinary situations that even I couldn't have imagined. And they're making a success of it. So I really get inspired by what our young entrepreneurs are doing. And I'm in constant conversations with them on Facebook. I even know some of them, you know. I go into meetings, I say, hey, where's Austin? And stuff like this, and they come. Because they're doing amazing things. But you know, you've got people like Juliana Rotich, the young Kenyan woman who built Ushahidi. We got Fred. Is Fred here today? Fred Swaniker, the African Leadership Academy. Many of you know Fred is an alumni of Stanford. I mean, these are the guys who are going to totally transform our continent and the world, to be honest. But you know, it's not so much. I mean, it's a great privilege, of course, when you can have a conversation with people like President Obama, who I knew before he was president, and I always remind him that, you know, I'm 8 months older. It's just to, you know, this helps you to get a stability. The man is such a great success. But in Africa, it matters. I'm senior brother. So no. But really, it's people I work with over the years. People like Dr. Judith Rodin. She's here. She's the former president of the Rockefeller Foundation. She's been an amazing mentor to me over the last 10 years, particularly in understanding philanthropy. Because many of us as entrepreneurs, when we set out to go into philanthropy, we actually don't know how it works. And you need to be talking to people like Dr. Rodin to understand. So it's a lot of people that I work with over a very, very long time that I turn to when I face challenges.
Shifting to philanthropy a bit, in addition to your success as an entrepreneur, you've funded the education of over 40,000 children across Zimbabwe and Africa. How must it feel to have come so far from humble beginnings, and what has motivated you to give back in such an extraordinary way? Well,
first of all, I'm really excited this week because we just got an announcement that we got a Rhodes Scholar out of our program this year. And we got one last year. And I think that's our third or fourth now. And it began like a lot of things. I don't think my wife and I sat down and said, you know, let's give back. Because to be honest with you, we started when we didn't have any money. So there was almost nothing to give back if you think of it that way. There was a crisis in Africa at the time, which was HIV/AIDS. People were dying on a scale you cannot imagine. If in my small business, I was burying members of my workforce every week. You know, we actually thought we were all going to die. That's how it felt living in Africa in 1990, 91, because of the HIV crisis. And what made the crisis so difficult were the children. What would we do with the children? I knew what happens when children don't go to school. We had Liberia to tell us about that. Child soldiers, all sorts of challenges. You could rip apart a country if these kids did not go to school. So for us, it was responding to that, and we came up with this model, which my wife then said she was going to run full time. It was basically, if if we can find a relative to the child, rather than try to institutionalize any children, let's find their relatives and tell their relatives, we will meet the economic side. We'll pay for school fees, we'll give you some food, we'll help with clothing, and so forth. So it began as a little program really around our own employees. And we probably had 50 when my wife kind of began to do it on a full-time basis. And she'd come from work and she would just make sure these kids were looked after. And one day, just walked in and said, actually, there are 5,000 that we now help. And we've extended it beyond the company because people keep bringing these kids to us. So we built it from there. And as of this year, 20 odd years into it, we've assisted 250,000 that went through our system of education. We began to, wherever we went, the first thing we told our management team, so if we went to Botswana or Zambia, any country, you've got to set up the program, you've got to support it. So we support it across every single country where we operate. And then we select from those kids the really high performers. What do you do if it's 16 and you've got a genius on your hands? Do you say, go home? We just treat them like our own kids. We help them apply for scholarships to Stanford and Harvard and wherever. So we have 354 in the United States this year of our kids. And we've got some in China, some in the UK, and so forth. And we help them along. And so it's been a great program to see.
You've mentioned that entrepreneurship is not just about making money, but about being an agent for change. There's many people here in this audience who have large dreams of going into the world and being catalysts for transformative change. What do you think we should know? And most importantly today, what is your call to action for us?
First of all, don't wait until you've made your billion. Okay, I know everyone at Stanford ends up making $1 billion once they're entrepreneurs, right? I mean, that's why you come to Stanford, right? So, look, you're almost guaranteed to be successful. So start straight away. Why do you have to wait? As you register your company, register your foundation, register your philanthropy. And it's actually good for you. In our house, we actually never discuss business. We discuss the things we're doing around philanthropy. With my kids, in fact, it's very difficult with my kids because they're more interested in the philanthropy side. Then maybe during holidays, they prefer to go work for their mother. Very few volunteer to go and sell in one of my shops. But the reality is, these things in today's society, you start straight away. There's no reason for you to wait. You've got to find something you've got to find a cause. If you don't find a cause, you'll find that making money is itself quite empty. You've got to get into your cause now. What is it you're interested in? Is it the environment? Is it climate change? There is something that should capture your interest every day. And for me, I can't wait at the end of my day to escape into discussing the issues of philanthropy. That's why I'm here. We are here to discuss smallholder farmers in Africa. So you make it an integral part of what you are doing. But if there's an even more excellent way, as they say, why not just do the philanthropy? And because if you feel you can make a change without going off to run a for-profit, do it. That's my counsel.
Final question before we open it up to some of our business students here for questions. What do you think are some of the most pressing global problems that we should be thinking about today?
Wow. You know, we always think, don't we, that we'd like to hand our children fewer problems than were handed to us. You know, our parents kind of handed over a world where they said, well, we've achieved, the Soviet Union is gone. Because we lived under the Cold War. And not so sure we're handing over a great world to you at the moment. I'm sorry about that. You've got a few problems that you're going to have to deal with. Of course, top of mind for me is climate change. Because it doesn't give us, we don't have a planet B, somebody said. We don't get another shot at it if we don't get into it now. So it's up there. From the African perspective, it's jobs. One would argue it's global, but for your generation, it's bigger than decolonization ever was as a challenge. We have a continent where the average age is 19. We are 1.2 billion. By some estimates, we'll be 4 billion by the turn of this century in the lives of most of you. If we don't create jobs, we end up with Boko Haram and Al-Shabaab. It's as simple as that. And they can sweep all the way down to the south. So the security nexus is linked to the jobs. We have to create hope. You know, when I think of the people trying to cross the Mediterranean, sometimes you read reports of 500 drownings a week in the Mediterranean. We almost forget that they had to cross the Sahara first to get to the Mediterranean. And yet we have a continent with so much resources, so much capacity. So it's an extraordinary charge for us while we are still able to do something, but an even greater challenge for our children. But it's also global. I think the stability of the world, the future of the world, will to a great extent be shaped by our response to this. So we have to pick up every tool, everything that we can to try and take on some of these challenges. The rest, well, you're Stanford, you know them.